Thanks, Liz. Right on cue. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chris Fabian. The company is ResourceX, and today we're going to talk about tools for the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as hopefully the soon-to-be signed infrastructure bill, and some specific software that we're helping communities use as they are gathering proposals, qualifying spending plans, and beginning to prioritize them and report back. I know we have a diverse audience today. I wanted to make clear as we start today's presentation that while ResourceX specializes in program-centric budgeting and priority-based budgeting, today is about the American Rescue Plan Act toolset that we've developed and we've been using with a few communities, which we'll talk about. I did see Eric from Connect in Pittsburgh. Hi, Eric. And I know from our past conversations with your organization, we've talked more about the program partnerships and program mapping opportunities. Just didn't want you to be surprised that today we're going to be fully focused on the ARPA tools overall. So we have more events, more webinar presentations where we usually talk about different tool sets, again, on the priority-based budgeting side, on the program-specific, program-centric budgeting, on budgeting for climate action, budgeting for equity. But today we're talking about the very exciting bevy of resources in the American Rescue Plan Act and the infrastructure bill, and how communities are starting to get organized to be able to solicit and prioritize spending proposals. So we have been obviously very excited as some of the news on the infrastructure bill has come out. I know there's going to be a lot more information about how those resources are going to be made available and what guidance or qualifications or criteria we can use for infrastructure. Today, we're going to focus primarily on ARPA, but with the thought process being, we're going to talk about a very similar strategy. Our goal is to help organizations make sure that they have a mechanism to ask for spending proposals, whether you're asking a citizen group in a workshop or online, whether you're working with elected officials, your own partner communities, or your own staff members and department heads. How do we get great proposals on the table? And then how do we start to get some minimum specifications about those proposals and really flesh them out so that we have clarity on what we are committing to? Does it meet Treasury guidance? How are we going to report back? How do we prioritize these proposals, one versus the other? And we thus far have been very fortunate enough to begin our work with the city of Pueblo, Colorado, which we'll talk about today, Alexandria, Virginia, Tacoma Park, Maryland, and Roanoke, Virginia overall. So we'll talk about some of their stories and how it's beginning to unfold. Many of you have joined us from ICMA, and I just wanted to highlight and promote some of ICMA's most recent research, which is available online. This came out just before Halloween. And just describing some of the trends overall, I think they had 600 responders to their initial research, where some communities are really off and running in their commitment to spending for American Rescue Plan Act funds. Other communities are on the complete other end of the spectrum, and maybe they're just starting to set up a committee to evaluate various spending proposals. Some of you have hired full-time ARPA coordinators and managers, and that's been successful. And where we're coming into the picture is we're just realizing from the clients who we work with that there is a lot of planning that needs to take place before we jump in and start using the funds. And we've learned some helpful tips along the way on how to frame the types of proposals that are coming in, what questions to ask to make sure we are understanding the full scope and breadth of the spending proposals. And we've tried to build those into our own software platform as we are deploying tools to help manage all of this. So this was ICMA. So our company is devoted to local government. We are, most of us, former practitioners who have spent time in local government, and we're passionate believers in what local government can do to deploy resources in a prioritized manner towards outcomes that really matter. And we see local government as an incredible vehicle for the type of positive change that we want to see in society. And that's why we built the company the way that we did. So as the American Rescue Plan Act has rolled out, our biggest motivation is making sure that you all are able to deploy these resources in a way that really makes a difference. Like we've heard it so many times that these are once in a generation, once in a lifetime opportunities to have these kind of resources available. But that's only true if we use the resources in such a way that it actually change lives for the residents in your community. And there are clearly lots of challenges here. One being the simple fact that in many of our organizations, we're just overwhelmed. We are down budget staff. We're down staff all over the place in our organization. So to be able to have the internal resources available to even start a process, ask for spending proposals, it's a lot when we're already suffering from staff shortages and all the other work that needs to take place. We've had some communities that we're worried about, are we crystal clear on the spending criteria and eligibility of certain spending proposals? Do we know enough about the spending proposals that are coming in to make sure that we're not going to face any sort of clawback for eligibility? There are tensions, of course, over the fact that these are one-time resources that are coming in. And so if we use them in such a way that we're committed to ongoing costs, how are those going to be planned for? Will our own organizations have to pick up the ongoing costs that we commit to? Will there be other partners? Should we not invest in anything unless it's one time? These are the types of practical challenges that come with this once in a generation opportunity, but we could still go a long way with it. And that's what we want to help you do. So two components to our strategy that we'll talk about today. Number one is in basically proposal development. How are you going out, whether it's with citizens, partner organizations, your own elected officials, or your own staff, and getting the best possible spending proposals on the table to evaluate? And then with those spending proposals, are we collecting the right information, not only for Treasury, but for ourselves to be able to evaluate and prioritize those spending proposals? Because for most of us, we're going to receive many more requests for spending than we are actually given from the American Rescue Plan Act. So how will we have a transparent, consistent means of prioritization evaluation that you can report on back to your council, back to your citizens, and say, we chose to fund this spending proposal and this other proposal, we chose not to? That's what you're going to learn about today and our tools to approach that. So there's a little bit of hands-on work as well. And I will take a break after we go through this first section and invite you into a sandbox environment to go ahead and take a look for yourselves at how we're going through proposal generation. And then we'll do the same thing on proposal evaluation. So this is part one. Our idea is, how are we reaching out? We built these tools in a way that you might be able to use them in a facilitated workshop where you are speaking to a group of citizens, or you're speaking to council or elected officials, or you're rolling this out to your own departments and you're asking them to fill out specific information about a spending proposal that you're going to take into consideration among all others. And then in part two, we'll get into proposal evaluation and prioritization. So if any of you followed along as we were presenting about ARPA from about March when it first came out, We had a long series of presentations. I'm going to give you the crash course in about 5 minutes or so on several months of presentations. But we established a position that we recognize all the various tensions that exist around the use of ARPA resources. And this has been really helpful because it's recognizing and commemorating these various intentions for the use of resources that is proving to be very helpful as you frame or package the types of spending proposals that are coming in. So from the earliest days, we had some pull to use the resources for our most vulnerable communities and residents, and other polls to try to use those resources for the future and building a more sustainable community for the long term. And we're saying, look, all of these are eligible and valid intentions and priorities for the use of the resources. So we came up with a framework or a way of packaging spending proposals that we called 5 for the Future, our 5-tier plan. And it started with kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy. Tier 1 was, are we carving out a certain amount of our ARPA resources to fund people who are immediately in need right now? They need the resources for all the suffering that they've gone through, all the way up to Tier 5 big swings, which was more, can we commit another portion of ARPA resources towards like ending generational poverty or tackling equity in our community overall? And in between, we had basic things around revenue loss and stabilizing our reserves, leveraging partners who also have resources as well. Not saying that this was the only way to characterize the use of funds, but our point here was we were realizing that city councils, as they're trying to consider or differentiate among all the spending proposals coming in, it can be really helpful to have various categories and a way to say we're trying to divvy up the funds. If you are at all one of the communities who is establishing a special committee for understanding all the proposals coming in, again, this has been a helpful way to distinguish. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they used what they call the P4 framework. So rather than using the 5-tiered plan like we described, their buckets, if you will, were people, planet, place, and performance. And that was helpful. It's the same type of recommendation. Having different intentions or different themes for your spending proposals can be super helpful. In Pueblo, Colorado, where we helped support their work, they had individuals and households. You see there in yellow was one of their buckets. Youth, small business, so they're making sure that they have ARPA resources to fund small business related proposals, nonprofits, tourism and hospitality, and community resilience. So our question and what we hope that you're having as a takeaway is, do you have these kind of priority areas? In Pueblo, they were the pillars. In Pittsburgh, they were the principles, or spending intentions to theme the type of proposals that are coming in. Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, their American Rescue Plan Act and Immediate Needs Report is available online and very much followed the 5-tier plan overall. So these will be available to you in your slides. I won't go through Tier 1, Tier 2 in tremendous detail, but this is what we presented on basically for the last 8 months or so since ARPA came out, were these various spending categories. And again, for the purpose of today's workshop, our recommendation to you, if you're at the starting place at all about going out and asking for spending proposals, it can be really helpful if you are telling your audience who are going to be responding to you what type of spending buckets or categories you're looking for. No different than you would do if you launched an RFP process or something along those lines. You're trying to encourage those who are giving you spending proposals. What are you looking for? And we built that into the software, actually. Once you identify those thematic areas, You want them to be able to telegraph or communicate to you what their proposal is all about. Is it about taking big swings? Is it about partnerships? What are they responding to? And if you divvy up your ARPA resources in such a way, you can begin to prioritize all of the proposals within any given bucket overall. So this is a snapshot of how our portal looks, and I'll open it up here in just a second. But this is a list of spending proposals that are starting to come in. We have Alexandria's here by way of example. And our mindset was, what if you are gathering proposals from a citizen group one day, and then next week you're gathering proposals from council, and last month you already had staff submitting proposals? You want to be able to have one place where they're all coming in together, and now we can start to characterize some basic information about the proposal as it's coming in. So here is one of the proposals in Alexandria. We have accessible and affordable dental and vision care for all Alexandrians. Notice in the top left, we're saying, what is the theme of the spending proposal that's coming in? Is it about vulnerable population, budget stabilization, partnerships, big swings, and so on? What are other minimum specifications that we might want to be able to capture? Are there ongoing expenses that we are needing to be aware of? Are there one-time expenses for this proposal? And are there any new revenues that might actually be coming in, as some of the proposals we've seen are actually developing new resources for the organization? And that could be one of your criteria overall. These are flexible areas within the tools, and we've designed it this way because at the end of it all, you want to be able to crank out a PDF report that has all of the proposals together as your council is considering it, as you're posting it online, like Unified Government in Kansas City, Kansas did, or if you're submitting this as some of your background for Treasury overall, this could all certainly be of help. In Alexandria, they had categories like degree of complexity with specific definitions. Definitions like, are there other partners involved? Is this politically sensitive? So again, they're just trying to characterize all of the proposals coming in. For timeline overall, is it something that is shovel ready? Is it immediately something we can implement? Is it going to take 1 or 2 years out? And then finally, do we have any basic information on Treasury guidance as the proposal is coming in? I just want to show you a different example. This is what we're doing in Tacoma Park, Maryland right now. So what you're looking at is a different set of characteristics of a proposal. So they wanted to see alignment of proposals with their priorities, just showing that the software portal is flexible. In their case, they had 6 priorities. And so every spending proposal that's coming in, they wanted to say, well, what bucket, what category is it going to belong to? So here's a basic income pilot program. It fits Council Priority 6, community development for an improved and equitable quality of life. Great. They had us redesign some of the costing categories so that we were recognizing not only is the proposer letting us know that there are ongoing expenses, but literally tell us what's the 2022 expense, 2023, 2024, and all the way through 2026 when the spending is anticipated. We have to be able to use it. Anything that we have to declare past 2025. They had eligibility determination, economically disadvantaged reporting requirement, Treasury guidance category, and so on for each of their proposals. So this is just the minimum specifications that anybody who is submitting a proposal should be able to comment on. Now, in Tacoma Park's case, they had internal staff to make sure that they're going back through and saying, are we sure that we know about the Treasury guidance? Maybe if you're rolling this out to citizens or residents in your community, they might not know the specifics of Treasury guidance. So that was another tip along the way, was to have some quality control as you go through it. I am going to pause here and let everybody go ahead and try to log in yourselves, and I'll follow along. We did want to open this up so that you have an opportunity to see what the portal looks like and just play in a sandbox. So as I toggle out, I'm going to drop a link into the chat. And I'll guide you through logging in as well. So if you have your chat open, you can go ahead and click on this link, and it will bring you to a portal like you see here. And when you get to this portal, I should have told you that everybody enter in ARPA at resourcex.net, and your password is welcome, WELCOME, all lowercase. So I'll type that into the chat as well. Welcome. It auto-corrected. That's supposed to be all lowercase. Sorry about that. And when you click login, I'll just go through a basic demonstration, but hopefully you can see it for yourselves. The portal fires up, and you're going to see where you can use this for outreach to any group that you're facilitating, anybody who's putting together a spending proposal to begin with. So proposal inventory is where proposals are created and where they're stored. So go ahead and click on that. That's the single gear icon. And again, the idea was from our organizations, it's not just one event where you are gathering spending proposals, but you might have a committee meeting. You might be doing something with the Chamber of Commerce that's more regional. In Roanoke, they have citizens submitting proposals, and they have staff in a totally different setting submitting proposals, and they have elected officials coming together as well. And we want one place where all of this is stored. If you're adding a new proposal from scratch, you just click on the add ARPA proposal. We come in and add some basic information like Chris's new proposal with a great description of that proposal, just to get the basics down. Hooray, the proposal is added. And from there, I can search for it. So where's Chris's new proposal? Right here. And if I was going to go in and add some of the basic information that we were just looking at a moment ago, this would be designed for the type of input that you are looking for. So my proposal might be about leveraging partnerships. I would indicate the type of ongoing expenses that I have for this proposal, like so. Some basic budget impacts with my description, and some insight around the complexity and timeline as we're putting this all together, and go ahead and save those changes. So we wanted to make this as simple as possible as you go along. But again, go ahead and check it out for yourselves and try to create a proposal. I'm going to go back to my slides. So first things first. If I can find my slides, of course. Great. We'll leave that sandbox open for you to play around in, just so you have a general idea of how it comes together. But as I get back to my slides here, part one of the presentation was a portal for collecting and organizing the spending proposals that are coming in. And again, if this was for the infrastructure bill, maybe you have a different design for the questions, the initial questions that you're asking. If it's for ARPA, maybe you have different spending buckets, but that was our overall recommendation. So part two is now imagine, and this might be where you are right now, you have a bunch of proposals already, and now we need some sort of means or criteria to begin to evaluate, differentiate, and ultimately prioritize what we're going to say yes to and what proposals are going to be rejected, and then finally reporting back on it. And this is where we have brought some of the hallmark features and functionality from what some of you already know is in priority-based budgeting, where we have criteria, we have a formal scoring process that takes place, and this is how organizations prioritize their program budget, every program that they offer, or capital projects. So all we've done is brought that functionality into your ARPA tools for these spending proposals with what we know. In Alexandria, Virginia, they took the same methodology of priority-based budgeting and were able to prioritize within their basic spending categories. So that's what you see here, from health and social services to housing to infrastructure and so on and so forth. In their case, differentiated between tranche one and tranche two. How are they scoring and ranking those proposals overall? In Pueblo, Colorado, this was their scoring criteria. So every single proposal that came in was evaluated on a point system by the proposal's eligibility, the overall complexity of the proposal, the cost of the proposal, percentage of community benefiting, the impact that the proposal had on their specific equity goal, and there's evidence of sustainability. This was actually pretty cool because between evidence of sustainability and due diligence, they were scoring proposals on how they leveraged the resources of other organizations. So your proposal would actually go to the top of the list if you're demonstrating that you, in their case, brought the county in or brought the school district in to be able to add funding to a multi-organizational spending proposal. And then in their case, in Pueblo's cases, they were differentiating from infrastructure projects. They were trying to say, if we think that this spending proposal might be eligible for funds soon to be available from the infrastructure investment bill, let's flag those as well, because maybe we don't have to fund them with ARPA resources, and we'll try to move them off the table. So you see the 0, 2, and 4 as proposal developers were entering their proposals. They have an opportunity to score the proposal themselves. Other organizations have had internal committees go through that scoring process to take every single proposal and say, how does it meet our eligibility criteria? How does it meet our community benefiting criteria? Those are facilitated scoring workshops that have taken place to be able to score and rank the proposals effectively. This just came out yesterday. This is the draft for Tacoma Park, Maryland. So similar categories that you see overall, but this is their equity impact, their alignment with council priorities. They're looking for, are there any spending alternatives that they might be able to take a look at? So these are made available, especially Pueblo's is online. Tacoma Park will ultimately be online. I believe Alexandria's is online as well. So for those of you who are at this stage where you have proposals coming in and now you're thinking through, how are we going to go through and score them all on a common basis, this sort of scoring criteria has proven out to be very helpful as you consider them all. So in Pueblo's case, kind of going back through it, at this point in your process, you want to be able to ask additional questions to clarify the proposal that's coming in and move on to actually scoring and ranking it. So that's what we've entered into the tools here with our example from accessible and affordable dental and vision care for all Alexandrians. We then move into the next phase, which is, what are some clarifying questions that we might want to ask to make sure we have total clarity on what the proposal is all about. And again, we're asking them in the software because you can download a PDF report at the end of this with all of this information. So it's ready-made, again, for council to take a look at, for your ARPA internal committee, a citizen group, and so on. But I wanted to give you a sense for what scoring looks like, and then I'll show you some of the PDF reports as well. But by bringing the priority-based budgeting scoring functionality over to the ARPA component of the portal, we're just loading in your scoring criteria. So here is, just like we saw for Pueblo, census result, community benefiting, equity, sustainability, and so on. And we have a progress bar so that you all who are administering and overseeing the process internally, you want to see that, have all the proposals been scored? Are we at a place where we can start to dig into all of this? If I click on companion funds, you see towards the top here is the criteria for each of the point systems, the 0, 2, or 4 for those scores. The higher the score, the higher the proposal is going to rank. And if you have an internal committee doing the scoring, or if you're allowing this to be open to the creator of the proposal, the idea is for any given category, like companion funds, every proposal is coming through and being assigned a specific score with an explanation to justify whether that score is legitimate or not. In the portal, we offer 2 sets of scores, which can be pretty important. So here, in this case, in Alexandria, there is an internal departmental score for the department who created that proposal, and a second step for peer review to allow for some quality control review of all of the proposals and the scores, a second set of eyes, if you will, to question the scores that the department is giving. And then everything is normalized to a 100-point scale. So you can see that there might be differing opinions, and that's if we're in your shoes, you want to be able to see, have all the proposals not only been scored, but are the scores accurate and verifiable and legitimate? That's where we have definitely recommended a 2-phased scoring approach. It's always nice to give the creator of the proposal that first opportunity to score their proposal first, because they know where they're coming from with the proposal that they're putting on the table. But it's also really important to have a quality control step, a second set of eyes, to make sure that all of this is done fairly. So in Tacoma Park, they are going to go through an internal departmental scoring, and then they're creating teams around each of their evaluation criteria, peer review teams, to take a look at all of the proposals that have come in and to thoughtfully question the scores, so that when they submit a final recommendation to City Council, they're going to have their top to bottom prioritized list of all the proposals within each of their council priority areas overall. I'll give you a chance as well in just a moment, but I did want to show you what some of those reports look like. So as a report on all proposals as scored comes out of the system, what you're seeing, the way we've organized it, is however you have set up your themes. If you remember part 1, whether it was P4 in Pittsburgh, and you have your people, planet, place, and performance, or the 5 tiers as we have developed, vulnerable populations, etc. How the proposals were tagged using those radial buttons to any of the given priority areas or themes, that's how they're going to be ranked within it, depending on how they scored. So here are all of the vulnerable population proposals in Alexandria, and they are organized and prioritized within tier 1. And as I scroll down, ultimately, I'm going to get to tier 2 in the table of contents, which will be all of the priorities around budget stabilization, and they're prioritized within that list. And if I click on any one of these, I'll go back to the top here. And let's just do Alexandria Library Mobile Hotspot Lending Program. Within the report, we're getting that basic description, how it was designated with those min specs for the proposal from complexity, timeline, and Treasury guidance category. What were the known ongoing or one-time expenses? This again is an area where if you have folks in the budget office who can apply that second set of eyes, but doesn't always have to be budget either. It can be in your committee or your peer review teams too, to really ask, did the department do this right for their ongoing costs? Are there ongoing costs that they didn't consider? Is this one time in nature? Again, you just want to be setting yourselves up for success, that if you approve a proposal to move forward, and it does have ongoing costs that last beyond the ARPA resources, what is the game plan? Are you going to sunset this particular project? Or are you going to pick up those ongoing costs? Are they going to be a priority for your organization? Is this going to be what another entity has to pick up in terms of ongoing costs? And then how did it score? That's that phase two, which you had the scoring criteria, the zeros, the twos, the fours, and the composite score. In this case, it was an 87.5, which is really high. And then if they had gone further to answer any of the specific questions, this is where that would show up. And just for cross-reference, here's Tacoma Park with different criteria. So their proposals were organized around their council priorities, and they're just starting to go through it, but we just took a look at their report as it's coming down. So we looked at laptop lending program. We can see their specific description. They have different categories, so the report is coming down in a different way. And what are the costing details that we know? In this case, they're suggesting that it's just a one-time expense. They have not made it to scoring yet, but when they do, this is where we'll see the scoring information. And they used different qualifying questions to come down in their report as departments or citizens were starting to provide a little bit more narrative on the background of a proposal. They did a great job on their questions, but again, we're just trying to think through. We wanted to design this in a way that after you go through scoring and you have to submit a list of recommended projects to City Council or to a specific committee, that it's coming down in one nice package. And this is also useful for some of the guidance reporting as well. All right. Well, I think I can stop here for a second. We still have a little bit of time left, but I did want to make sure that we had some time for Q&A. As we get into it, feel free to come off of mute or to drop your question in the chat if you did have an additional question. But full circle, these were the two main areas that we wanted to cover, which was proposal creation, giving you a tool to use in facilitated workshops to gather proposals as they're coming in, qualify them with some minimum information, minimum specifications, whether you're at a citizen meeting or internal staff meeting or council, pull them all together in one hub. And then on the scoring and prioritization area, how to go in and start to do that scoring, how to set up your evaluation criteria. And I guess I could show you that for sure, how scoring begins to take place. I'll show you that, but please raise your hand or drop a question in the chat if you wanted to have anything specific addressed. But I was going to show you scoring by ARPA proposal. Here's Chris's new proposal. Let's look at one that has been scored. If I go in, it's pretty simple. Here are all of the scoring criteria. If they had their scoring matrix and we gave them some guided facilitated instruction, they're literally just coming in and adding their scores and providing any specific background info to justify the scores that are coming in. And you save your scores and you move on to the next proposal on your list. So that would be a departmental scoring. And then if you had a peer review process, the peer review teams would see those scores and meet as a committee in order to come in and provide some additional feedback on scores that they may override as you go. Well, cool. I said I was going to stop a moment ago, but I'll stop now. Any questions on how the portal is set up or any questions on how your process is going that you wanted to talk through, or where you are in your ARPA process. It's okay. Well, hopefully this made sense, and you have a perspective on how the tool works. This is the long and short of what we wanted to make sure and show you today. Again, from Roanoke, Virginia to Pueblo, Colorado. Very cool. Thanks, Jesse, for chiming in. And I know we're going to meet in just a couple weeks, I believe. So I appreciate, Jesse, are you all in Albuquerque more towards the beginning of asking for proposals, or maybe sometime in the middle of your process overall?
If you can hear me, unfortunately, the first tranche has already been appropriated, and I think
Sure.
it was appropriated pretty quickly. But I believe our mayor administration, they went through some process to evaluate where the funds were going. But I do believe this method and the way you guys are showing it is much more, it's much more beneficial from a transparency standpoint. And I know our organization is trying to be transparent on these funds. And so that's why I want to convince the council that this would be a really good idea to look at this for the next tranche if we could, since
Sure.
the first tranche has already been appropriated.
Well, cool. I know, man, I totally get it. Like for some councils, there's just immense pressure to get the resources in and deploy them as fast as possible, so the resources aren't sitting in the account for too long, and citizens are happy to see the money being put to use. So I like your thinking. Tranche 1 might be spoken for, but maybe there's an opportunity for a little bit more transparency in the process, and we'll definitely follow up on that front. Thanks for coming off mute. Cool. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. And for those who are tuning in to the recording, thank you for checking it out. I mean, you know how to contact us. I'll just drop my email in the chat. But if you did want to talk further about what you're going through in your organization, even if it's just for some tips about what you're building, community that you or committees that you might be assembling, how you're going about the process for asking for proposals, how you're going through the process for submitting to Treasury, please use us as a resource, because we really hope that you're able to deploy these resources in a way that is totally game changing. I mean, that's the hope for everybody. So thanks again for joining, and we hope to stay in touch. Take care, everybody. And thanks, Eric.